A familiar sight. Mount Pleasant, the site of the old police academy, will make way for a new HDB housing estate. More COVID-19 curbs relaxing today. Groups of 5 allowed to eat together at hawker centres and coffee shops. Singapore's inflation highest in more than 8 years. An economist tells us how this will affect living costs. Welcome to The Big Story. I'm Olivia Quay. You can subscribe to the Straits Times channel so you never miss a single episode. Singapore's newest HDB housing estate will spring up in Mount Pleasant at the site of the old police academy, with the first BTO project there set to launch within the next 5 years. Now, the area is 33 hectares and will provide around 5,000 new homes. As you can see by the blue dotted lines, the estate is bounded by Thomson Road and the PIE, with the upcoming Mount Pleasant MRT station somewhere in the middle. Because the site includes the historic Old Police Academy, several of its buildings will be retained, and an environmental impact study was carried out in the wider area as well. To share more are my colleagues Michelle Ng, who covers housing, and Keng Jin, who reports on heritage matters. Michelle, let's start with you. Now, this sounds like a huge development, 33 hectares, 5,000 new homes. Aside from size, what is the significance of this estate?
Well, the significance of this estate is that it is, well, first of all, it is a new estate. So the last time we had a new estate was Bidadari, and I guess Tengah is considered a new town. Obviously, Tengah is like way larger than this. We're talking like 700 hectares. So for this Mount Pleasant, it's about 33 hectares, which is about a third of the size of Bidadari. And the significance of this project is that it is a brownfield site, meaning they are taking a piece of land that already has developments on it to recycle it and to turn it into a residential area. So the police academy itself is quite a recognizable landmark, having been around since the 1920s and was in use for about 80 years. So I think it's nice that the new housing estate will pay homage to the police life and the police heritage. So it's not just about mitigating the environment, but they will also keep elements of, you know, the heritage and culture that comes along with it. And of course, this comes against the backdrop of rising demand for BTO flats. So this Mount Pleasant site is going to be a mature area site because it's very near Toa Payoh and Novena area. And we all know that mature area BTO flats are very, very popular.
That's right. Well, Keng Jin, Michelle already brought up, the old police academy as well as, the pre-war black and white bungalows. So a very heritage-rich area that this estate will be in. So Keng Jin, we understand a heritage study was done. What were the key findings and what are the preservation plans for the area?
Hi, Olivia. So you're right. Yeah, a heritage study was done. In total, about 50, or rather specifically 48 buildings were looked at. And what happened here was that those who were carrying out the study had to weigh the heritage value of each of the buildings against each other to decide what's retained. In the end, about 9 buildings and areas were deemed to be most significant. So these included 5 blocks, as well as an old drill training shed, a swimming pool, a parade square, and a recreation field. And of these, the 5 blocks, as well as 1 extra block, so this is a senior police officer's mess, they will be proposed for conservation.
Right. Well, Keng Jin, the area also has vegetation, flora, fauna, and so on. So what is the environmental impact that this development will have?
Well, the environmental impact of the development remains to be seen, but I think what is significant now is the impact that the authorities are really preempting and hoping to avoid. So there were 2 key decisions that were made based on an environmental study that was carried out. The first involves realigning a road. So this road was initially to grant access to the new estate through the PIE, and the original alignment would have run through Kopi Swa Cemetery, which is rich in greenery and obviously provides a good homes for some of the animal species. So based on the environmental study, in consultation with environmental groups, for the new housing estate to be accessed at a point that is much closer rather than going through the cemetery. So this would save homes for a lot of the a lot of the species in the area. So the second decision that they have made is to fully retain 2 streams and to partially retain a third stream. So about 30% of this third stream is going to be retained, and they decided to go with this 30% that is to have more rich biodiversity. So it includes species that are of conservation significance, like a dragonfly species. So this is the collared threadtail. And whereas the 70% that they're not retaining has no conservation significance. And I think this shows that in terms of weighing balances, the homework has been done in terms of environmental studies.
I see. Well, Michelle, to round up the discussion, with this Mount Pleasant housing estate close to places like Balestier and Novena, and you mentioned Toa Payoh as well, do you think that flats there would fall under the new prime location public housing model?
Well, actually, the authorities are not saying at the moment. So, but even if it falls under this prime location public housing model, we will only know when the first BTO project is launched. But seeing that it's close to Toa Payoh town, which HDB has previously said that it's not considered a prime location housing model, but it's also close to Novena as well, like you said. But who knows? At the same time, this is only going to be launched within the next 5 years. So, it could or could not be. We really have no idea about that.
Right. Well, thank you very much for joining me today, guys. Journalists for The Straits Times, Michelle Ng and Ng Keng Jin. Eating at the hawker centre or coffee shop with our friends and colleagues kind of seems like a distant memory. Well, from today, groups of 5 fully vaccinated people from different households can dine at the same table again at 11 hawker centres and 7 coffee shops across Singapore. Multimedia journalist Kimberly Jow with more.
Miss eating at hawker centres with your friends? You're not alone. Since August, Singapore diners at hawker centres could only have one companion to eat with. Today, hawker centres welcomed back 5 vaccinated diners, regardless of whether they're from the same household. Here at Pasir Ris Central Food Centre, there are vaccination checks at all entrances to make sure diners use their trays together to check in.
There is people checking at the car park area because we drove here. So before we came down from the car park, there's people checking at the entrance.
The process of checking into a hawker centre is no different than you would usually, except for one thing. Thank you. You can only enter and dine in here if you have this orange sticker.
Now got larger group of people coming, but then now they need to take the sticker and all, so not a lot of people used to it. They like, why some people don't understand. So I think it's good that they open back, so hopefully business will get better, so it's better for everyone.
以下雨的情形来讲呢，如果是下雨，这边还有的做，有进展，今天可以有进步一点啊，因为新加坡人全部都有打vaccine了，打那个疫苗了，对吗？你怎样怕都没有用的，怕也要是要出来做工、出来吃东西的。
Today there is more office people coming over, but compared to the sales, it's almost the same. Because sometimes the office people will order through the delivery platform.
To diners, the constant checks serve as no barrier. In fact, having to declare one's vaccination status seems to be part of the new norm.
I think people will just get used to it because they love eating out. Singaporeans don't cook at home, so no choice.
I think Singapore should keep opening up instead of restricting.
There are 10 other food centres currently open to groups of 5 from different households. They are Bedok Food Centre, Bio Crescent Market, Geylang Serai Market, Holland Village Market and Food Centre, Market Street Interim Food Centre, Sembawang Hills Food Centre, Tiong Bahru Market, Kampong Admiralty Hawker Centre, Tzi Yuan Hawker Centre, as well as Hawker Centre at our Tampines Hub. The remaining hawker centres under NEA and NEA-appointed operators are slated to be ready by November 30. This, among other measures, moves Singapore back to the transition stage toward an endemic state. Kimberly Jow for The Straits Times.
Well, thanks so much, Kimberly. Overseas, Israel is rolling out Pfizer's COVID-19 vaccination for children between 5 and 11 years old in the wake of rising infections. The virus's reproduction rate had remained below 1 for 2 months but began climbing over the past 2 weeks and has now crossed the threshold. Daily cases have also crept up over the past few days, with half of the confirmed infections presently among children 11 and younger. In other news, Singapore's overall inflation rose to 3.2% in October, the highest in over 8 years. That's according to official Consumer Price Index data. The increase on a year-on-year basis is up from 2.5% in September, reflecting higher car prices and housing rents. Core inflation, which excludes rents and private road transport costs, climbed 1.5% last month from 1.2% in September due to higher services and food prices and a smaller decline in the cost of retail and other goods. MAS monitors core inflation most closely in its review of Singapore's monetary policy. Economist from CIMB Private Banking, Seng Wun, joins me now. Seng Wun, what do you make of the latest figures?
Well, it is higher than consensus estimate. We knew that prices essentially across a range of goods and services have gone up. It's a question of how much. Fortunately, I think I got it right in terms of it went over 3% on year, and essentially driven by just higher costs, I think, all across the range of goods and services.
How would this affect living costs for people like you and me?
Good question. Do you remember the CPI measures the basket of goods and services for a typical household? And this typical household typically lives in a HDB flat, and based on a selection of samples of household, we drew up this composition of goods and services. So essentially, it reflects how much a typical household in Singapore pay for goods and services, which has gone up month on month, year on year. So if we simply put, the cost of living has gone up more significantly in October compared to the previous month, and indeed compared to last year.
The CPI figure, it helps to gauge our inflation rate. So with that rising and presumably with it inflation as well, what else can policy planners in Singapore do aside from allowing the Sing dollar to strengthen?
It would be very easy for us to say, since Singapore import of its goods and services, I mean, if you take a look, the shirt I wear, material imported, the food that we put on the table, mostly imported, shampoo for washing our hair, ingredient all imported, car that we drive. So essentially, what we pay for our goods and services typically comes from outside, either in final form or in PDF goods to be finished as final goods, or even for services as well. Essentially, we don't produce as much as we could. We are, after all, a small, tiny city-state. So what can we do? Yes. Can we allow the exchange rate to go up? Yes, we could. But obviously, if we allow the exchange rate to be too strong, it basically may undermine Singapore's position as a global hub for trade and services. It may simply mean Singapore becomes too expensive. So it's a fine balance. So what else can we do? Not very much, apart from really just try to source as much of our goods as possible from as many corners or around the world to essentially diversify our food supply, for instance, as well as building up resilience domestically by investing in resources, etc., that build up capacity. So essentially, that's all we can do at this point. We are generally a nation of price taker rather than price maker.
I see. Well, Seng Wun, thank you very much for weighing in today. Seng Wun there, economist with CIMB Private Banking. Meanwhile, the National Environment Agency is warning the public against using ultraviolet C disinfection devices at home, like for the sterilization of mobile phones, jewelry and home surfaces, as many of these devices lack safety features that protect a person from exposure to UV radiation. UVC-based disinfection should be applied only in an industrial or commercial setting with appropriate safety features and safe use practices. Faculty members and staff at Nanyang Technological University have donated a record $13.68 million worth of unused leave to student aid and school advancement. This is about 33% more than last year's donation. NTU employees gave nearly 27,600 unused leave days this year, and the monetary value is based on individual salary rates. Well, those are our top stories for today. Visit straitstimes.com for more news and our YouTube channel for more videos. Subscribe by hitting the red button below. I'm Olivia Quay. See you tomorrow on The Big Story.